Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking about a really important topic, which is fire prevention and emergency safety, what our residents need to know to prepare and respond. For those of you that have joined us in previous years, welcome back. We will talk a lot about some of the topics we've discussed before to make sure that we can keep everyone in our building safe. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome. We are excited to share some information with you again about making sure that you are prepared in the event of an emergency. And we have some really great panelists joining us today. So just some quick introductions. My name is Stephanie Cardello. I am the Vice President of Compliance here at First Service Residential. I've been with the company for about 16 years, and we help oversee a lot of different regulatory compliance. One of the most important ones related to fire safety and making sure that all of our residents know what they need to do in the event of an emergency. We are joined today by some of our favorite partners, Bob O'Brien and Chris Hagan from New York Fire Consultants. Bob, do you want to do a quick intro and give them a little bit of information about your company?
Good evening, Stephanie, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for service for inviting us back. We're here tonight to try to impart a little bit of our collective knowledge that we've gained not only from the fire service, but for 25 years in business working with residential management companies to help keep you in the safest possible environment in the area that you live with your families.
Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you for having us. My name is Chris Hagan, and I'll be leading you through this presentation tonight. We've put together a lot of information in response to many questions that we've had in the past, as well as many questions that have come in prior to the seminar tonight. So hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of those questions through the presentation. And as Bob mentioned, at the end, we'll get to as many questions as possible. I have been with NY Fire Consultants for a little over 8 years now as an instructor and consultant, and I am also still an active member of the FDNY, and I serve in the rank of captain for the last 24 years in the FDNY. So I'm happy to be here, and why don't we get started, Stephanie?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us again this evening. So a few housekeeping items. I see some hands raised right now. If you all have any questions, please type it in the Q&A. Make sure you include your name, your email, your address, your building address, and your apartment number. So if we aren't able to get it to the question during the presentation, we can get back to you. And just so you all know, your question and information is only seen by us as the panelists. So not everyone that's in this webinar will be able to see that information. So if you have questions as we're going through the presentation, please just pop them in there. I will do my best to monitor them as we're going through, but we certainly have left time at the end for Q&A. All right, we have a new video for you all today. We thought that this was important for everyone to see, so I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Firefighters say a key issue forced them to fight this fire from the outside, using ladders to enter through second and third story windows at the apartment building on Bay 19th Street. Inside, it was initially too difficult to find the source of the fire. The hallways are long, and the door to the apartment where the fire started was left open.
Firefighters got to the second floor. They had trouble identifying the fire apartment because of the heavy smoke condition and the high heat.
Firefighters also worked to get everyone out, helping some down from an icy fire escape. In all, 16 people were injured, including 3 with critical injuries, an adult and 2 children.
They are in ICU.
This man says he's friends with those victims. He says a father and 2 young children. They were found in the hallway filled with smoke above where the fire started.
Dad was surviving his kids. He stuck in the smoke.
If you leave the fire door open, that causes all sorts of problems, and not for the people who are directly, the apartment is directly involved, but it's for their neighbors that were found upstairs.
From his apartment window, this man tells us he's lost everything. Now, with the fire out, he and others are left with nowhere to go.
And there is a law in New York City that mandates that doors in apartment buildings be self-closing, meaning if you leave the door open, it should close and latch on its own. It's not clear why that didn't happen in this case. That will be under investigation. The cause of the fire also under investigation tonight.
We wanted to share that video, and I think you heard quite a few times the mention close the door. So we're gonna talk about that a lot and the importance of it. So let's talk about what we're gonna discuss this evening. We're gonna talk about fire code requirements first, and that will again tie right into that video. We'll talk about fire prevention and evacuation planning. We'll discuss combustible, which are non-fireproof buildings, versus non-combustible fireproof buildings. We'll talk about reducing your risk, open versus closed doors, and the importance of having fire extinguishers. And then we have some hot topics, and these are new for this year for us. Fire blankets, which have been, we've received so many questions on those, lithium-ion battery safety, e-bikes and e-scooters. And then, of course, we'll talk about the importance of working smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And then we will end things with the medical emergencies and what you need to do in event of that before we move on to Q&A. So let's talk about some fire department fire code requirements. Self-closing doors, and again, you heard that several times throughout the video, the importance of having self-closing doors, and that's a newer local law, 111, and that mandates that all doors need to be self-closing. So when you go to leave your apartment, whether you close the door or not, that door should close. So one thing we talk a lot about, and we like to remind our residents that are on this webinar, if you're watching it at a later date, to just check to make sure that that self-closing door works. If there's an issue or a mechanism that's been installed that does not allow your doors to self-close, please let your superintendent or resident manager know so that they can make sure that they get that fixed. That is, Chris, probably one of the most important things, right? I know we talk later about making sure you close the door, but would you say this is probably one of the most important things in terms of apartment buildings and fires?
Yeah, not only does it contain the fire to the apartment that it originated in generally, but it also limits the spread of smoke throughout the building, which becomes an impediment for evacuation as well as an extraordinary breathing hazard. So
Right.
it helps facilitate evacuation if we can close the doors to the fire area.
And also containing the fire to that specific apartment, especially in non-combustible buildings. So we'll talk about close the door notices, what those look like, emergency markings, which are really important for the fire department to be able to locate apartments, locate where fires are originating from, and how they get around in your building. Again, we'll talk about smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. We'll really quickly hit on annual fire safety mailings and when you receive those and what's included in that. And then we'll talk about the fire safety notice, which is also known as the back of the door decal. So fire emergency preparedness guides. And these are part of the annual safety notice packages that all residents receive every year. They're mailed out between January 1st and January 15th of every year. This is one of those documents that's included in there. This example up here, there are many components to this fire emergency preparedness guide. It's about, is it 27 or so pages, Chris? It's a pretty large document. Yes.
Yep, and it's a document that is provided by the fire department, and First Service Residential did a nice job with making it a much more visually appealing with pictures and examples of all the stuff that they're recommending.
Right. So this is a sample, but it tells you specifically what type of construction your building is. And that's, I think, one of the most important things when you need to decide what you do in the event of a fire for your particular type of building, whether it's non-combustible or combustible, will dictate what it is that you do. So that information is shared on the guide. And then you have the back of the door decal, and this is a sample of what it looks like. And they are these stickers that are supposed to be installed on the back of every residential apartment door. And the reason why these are important, and I'm going to give you all a really great personal example too, but when there is a fire or an emergency and things are hectic and you're nervous and you're stressed, having that sticker right on the back of that door, even though I know from an aesthetic standpoint, it's perhaps not the most pleasing thing to look at, but it does tell you what you need to do. And I have a really good example. I was staying in a hotel and I smelled smoke. I was up on the 11th floor and I went to the back of the door in the hotel and there was nothing on there. It did not say whether I was in a combustible or non-combustible building. I being in the business, I got the sense that it was likely a non-combustible building, but I called downstairs and said, I smell smoke. What type of building is this, and what do I do? And I, made sure the door was closed, and I put a towel down at the bottom of the door to prevent any smoke from coming in. But the first thing, my immediate reaction, and I've run compliance here, as I mentioned, for 16 years. I know that you are not supposed to open the door and rush out, but my immediate reaction in that moment when I smelled that smoke was, I want to get out of here and I want to leave. So having this decal on the back of the door that's a warning label for you that tells you what to do so you stay safe is really important. Chris, anything you want to add on these stickers?
I think for New Yorkers, this is an advantage, because I'm going to guess that you were traveling out of New York at the time, because it's a requirement in hotels as well as residential apartment buildings. So if you are paying attention to this decal in your everyday life, if you travel outside of New York City, you'll be more prepared than anybody else who might be staying someplace where it's not a fire safety requirement or fire safety code to post these notices on the backs of doors. So it's really important to pay attention to these things.
It is. And if you don't have a decal on the back of your door, please reach out to us and let us know. We have them in the office. We usually mail them out every 3 years to residents as well, with the mandate and recommendation that they need to be installed. And the feedback we always get is we don't like how they look. But I promise you, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, when there's a fire or an emergency, your immediate reaction is to run. And that could be the difference between, life and death in these fire situations. So really, these are helpful, and they are right in front of your face. That's the intent, to stop you, to get you to remember what am I supposed to do here. All right, so let's talk about fireproof, non-combustible versus non-fireproof combustible buildings. Chris, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Okay, one of the biggest challenges we have in the fire service is educating people on the differences between different building constructions, and because it matters how you respond based upon how your building is built or the materials that are used. You saw in the back of that in this last slide, the back of that back of the door safety notice, it said you are in a non-combustible building, because there's different guidance for both combustible and non-combustible buildings. We use the terms fireproof and non-fireproof, but they're a little bit misleading. Fireproof buildings are considered non-combustible, meaning the structural elements won't burn. And fireproof, non-fireproof building means the structural elements may contribute to the development of the fire. We recommend evacuation. Your recommended evacuation will depend on whether your building is combustible or non-combustible, right? Non-fireproof or fireproof, and if the fire is in your apartment or some other portion of the building. The reason many of us in the fire safety world do not like the words fireproof and non-fireproof, and I'm going to continue to try to use combustible and non-combustibles, because it's kind of a misnomer. It doesn't mean your building or your apartment is immune to fire. If you just look around your apartment tonight and think about all the furnishings in your home, these are all things that can burn, whether it's living room furniture, mattresses. Think about how many electronics the average apartment has nowadays in 2025. All things that can burn. Think about how many plastic bins we have in our apartment, also combustible, and all the things we put into a plastic bin. So the building is not immune to fire. It just means the structural elements either will burn in a combustible building versus a non-combustible building, and we'll get to that on the next slide. Generally, in a fireproof building, the fire and smoke will be contained to the portion of the building, maybe the particular apartment where fire started, provided that fire-rated doors or self-closing doors are working properly. So that's a good thing. In combustible buildings, the fire may, if it gets into the walls and into the structural elements, it may travel to other parts of the building. You can go to the next slide, and we will talk a little bit more about that, Stephanie. So why building construction matters? In a combustible building, you'll see here on the left, The building is constructed of wood beams, which may contribute to the spread of fire if fire gets into the structural elements behind the walls and stuff like that. So the actual structural elements, and if the fire is severe enough, may fail under an intense fire load. A non-combustible building, usually high-rise construction, buildings greater than 7 stories or 75 feet in height, building code and fire code requires them to be built of non-combustible construction materials and use non-combustible construction techniques like fire stopping. The buildings constructed of steel and concrete, and which do not fail under fire load generally, and they do not contribute to fire spread. The best way to think about non-combustible buildings is think about a fireplace. On a winter night, if you had a fireplace and you made a nice cozy fire in that fireplace, the wood and the paper and the kindling burns, but the fireplace doesn't collapse. That's kind of like a non-combustible building. It doesn't mean that there's everything inside the building will not burn. It just means the structural elements. So generally, in a combustible building where there's a fire, where the fire can spread from one apartment or one area to another, we recommend evacuation versus a non-combustible building. You may be safer, and you'll see in future slides, if the fire is not in your apartment, to stay put. You might be putting yourself in harm's way in terms of smoke conditions if you leave when fire is not in your apartment. We can go to the next slide. So
All right, this question, yeah. In the event of a fire, should I stay or should I go?
So the first, if we go to the next slide, the first and easiest thing to talk about is if the fire is in your particular apartment. Doesn't matter what kind of building it is, obviously, you need to get away from the threat. You need to get away from the danger. So whether you're in a combustible building or non-combustible building. Now, a lot of people ask, how do I know if I'm in a combustible building or non-combustible building? Well, that back of door notice will tell you, as well as the page 1 of the Fire Emergency Preparedness Guide, which is always prominently displayed in first service residential buildings in the lobby area. That'll tell you if your building is combustible or non-combustible. Another big thing is if your building is over 75 feet in height, which is usually 7 stories or more, it generally won't have fire escapes. You're likely in a non-combustible building. If your building is 6 stories or less and has fire escapes, it's probably built of combustible construction. So that's an easy way of looking at your building. But check your Fire Emergency Preparedness Guide as well as the back of door notice to make sure you know what kind of building you're in. Well, regardless of what kind of building you're in, fire's in your apartment, we want you to evacuate. Close the door to the room if possible where the fire began, and leave your apartment and close your apartment door too. Make sure everyone leaves the apartment with you if that's possible. Take your keys and close the door. If possible, do not lock it. If it latches closed and locks, do not worry. The FDNY has keys to every door in the city. You just might not be able to use it after we go through it. Use the nearest stairwell that is smoke-free. If you enter a stairwell and there's more than one stairwell, and that stairwell, before you enter it, feel the back of the door with your hand, crack the door open. If there's smoke in that stairwell and you have another option, head to another stairwell. Do not use the elevators. Elevators are electronic hydraulic pieces of equipment. In high-rise buildings, elevators are needed by the fire department to reach upper floors. It takes the fire department a long time to reach the 28th floor of a building without the use of elevators. And so you can imagine that. The other thing is elevator shafts are vertical shafts in the building that connect floors. What we don't want you to be is stuck in an elevator that may stop working properly in a fire when there's maybe sprinklers are going off and there's water in the building, there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes these electronic and hydraulic pieces of equipment are not reliable or fail during a fire. So we do not want you trapped in that elevator when that shaft might be filling up with smoke. So we always try to use stairs when we get out. Call 911 once you reach a safe location. Never assume the fire has been reported. Obviously, if fire department's on scene already, it has been reported, but we can never get enough calls. Getting multiple calls from a particular building usually means we have a verified fire, and the dispatcher will send more resources sooner than waiting for the first units to arrive to verify whether we actually have a real working fire. Um, it's important that you meet the members of your household at a predetermined location outside the building. We should have that in our plan. And if you look at your resident emergency procedures guide, it talks about making a household plan for a place to meet up so that you can reunify. And if we are missing somebody, that can be communicated to the fire department officials outside the building, generally the chiefs. Look for the white hat. A chief usually wears a white helmet, and let them know if there's people that are still inside the building, some loved ones who didn't make it out. And then that leads to the last bullet, notifying responding firefighters of anyone who's unaccounted for, if you know that. Or if you know of a neighbor or another resident that maybe has a mobility issue, we want to let the fire department know that as well, because that person may need assistance leaving the building if they need to evacuate.
All right, thank you, Chris. Let's move on to if it's not in your apartment.
Okay, so if it's not in your apartment and your building is built of non-combustible construction, meaning we're not worried about the fire spreading from apartment to apartment, it is better for you to stay in your apartment. We've had numerous examples in the city of New York and throughout the country and actually worldwide, where people remote from the fire area in a non-combustible, like high-rise residential building, who were far away from where the fire was, took themselves from a regular place of safety in their apartment and put themselves in harm's way. I'll give you an example. In 2014, on the Upper West Side, there was a building that was 30 stories in height. The first 10 stories of it were commercial property. The upper 20 floors were apartment residential apartments. Very common in Manhattan to have this kind of mixed occupancy. The apartment that had the fire was on the 20th floor. Two residents on the 30th floor, 10 floors away from the fire, saw the fire trucks, heard there was a fire in the building, and chose to self-evacuate. They were 10 floors away from the fire in a non-combustible building. Those two individuals took a stairwell that filled up with smoke. One individual wound up in the emergency room in critical condition, and the other gentleman passed away. Had they stayed in their apartments, they would have been fine because they were 10 floors away in a non-combustible building. So if the fire's not in your apartment and you're in a non-combustible building, generally the best place for you to be is to stay inside your apartment and listen for instructions from firefighters unless conditions become dangerous. Understand the FDOI is going to search the entire building. If there's smoke in the hallway because the fire is in another apartment on your floor, the floor below you, you can seal your apartment door with towels or sheets, or seal air ducts if there's shared HVAC equipment, the way that Stephanie did in the hotel. Open the windows a few inches from the top and bottom, unless flames or smoke are coming from directly below you, to let some fresh air in. Do not break your windows. If conditions appear life-threatening, open a window and wave a towel or sheet to attract the attention of firefighters. If the smoke condition worsens before help arrives, get down on the floor, take short breaths through your nose. If possible, retreat to a balcony or terrace if you have one. And again, do not break any windows. This is especially important if the fire is in the floor below you. You don't want to take in a bunch of smoke and fire into your apartment. You can't unbreak a window. We can go to the next slide. So if fire is not in your apartment, but you are in a combustible building, a wood frame building, a building of brick and mortar, generally it will not be greater than about 6 stories in height. And like I mentioned before, it will probably most likely have fire escapes as a secondary means of egress. Your primary means of egress is your apartment door into the hallway, into the public hallway, and down the stairs. Secondary means of egress is generally fire escapes for these types of buildings. Before leaving your apartment, if fire's not in your apartment, feel the door and the doorknob for heat. Any door that you're going through, not just your apartment door. If not hot, open the door slightly and check the hallway for smoke, heat, and fire, right? Exit the apartment building if you can do safely. If the hallway or stairwell is not safe because of smoke or heat or fire, and you have access to a fire escape, use it to exit the building. Proceed if you don't feel comfortable navigating down the fire escape, at least get out on it so firefighters can see you and they can come assist you. Proceed cautiously and always carry or hold onto small children. Remember, fire escapes are not made for regular egress. If you've ever been out on one, they're very narrow and they are steep. The treads are steep, and the treads of the fire escape stairs are not very wide. So it's safest if you have to navigate down a fire escape to put the front of your body facing the fire escape stairs and use the handrail. This way, if you stumble or trip, you fall into the ladder and not head over heels if you're facing out away from the stairs. If you cannot use the stairs or fire escape, call 911. Tell them your address, your floor number, and your apartment number, and the number of people in your apartment. That will be relayed to fire department units on scene. So they'll make sure they get, the chief will make sure that he or she dispatches firefighters to your place, the place that you're sheltering in immediately. Again, seal the doors to your apartment with wet towels and air ducts as well if there's shared HVAC equipment. Open the windows a few inches from the top and bottom unless flames are directly below you. Don't break your windows, right? Because we do not want to give an avenue for smoke and fire below us to make it, or to an adjoining apartment to make it into our apartment. If conditions appear life-threatening, open a window and wave a towel or sheet to attract the attention of firefighters, or if you can get out on the fire escape and do the same. And if smoke conditions worsen before help arrives, get down low on the floor. Superheated gases and smoke rise. All that energy from the fire rises. So generally the cleanest air, the most uncontaminated air is close to the floor. Okay. We can change this slide. Thank you. So we'll talk a little bit about close the door notices. Closing doors save lives. These notices are a visible reminder to all building occupants about the importance of closing doors when exiting the building during a fire. We mentioned earlier, not only does it limit the spread of fire, regardless of the type of building you're in, it also helps limit the spread of smoke through the building, which helps facilitate safe evacuation. Smoke inhalation is the #1 cause of fire-related deaths, not direct flame impingement. In 2022 in the Bronx, we had a high-rise residential apartment fire called the Twin Parks was the complex. 17 people died. There was problems with self-closing doors that did not close. The fire was on the second floor. It happened in the middle of the day at about 11 a.m. And it was the third worst residential fire in U.S. history in about 40 years. There was a defective space heater that ignited, but the failure of the self-closing doors allowed smoke to permeate throughout the building from the second floor all the way to the 17th floor. And this was the killer for most of the individuals breathing in that toxic gas. During a fire, self-closing doors and fireproof doors will prevent smoke from traveling between apartments, and fire-rated doors, like most stairwell doors, will hold fire back. They're generally 2 hours or 3 hours rated. Closing a door helps contain the smoke and fire and assists firefighters. It prevents smoke from entering the stairwells, as I mentioned earlier. So it's really important as you leave to continue to close doors. We've seen plenty of fires worsen, or the effects of the fire worsen, because it originates in one apartment. That apartment door is left open, or something like a welcome mat or something gets jammed under it, and then all that smoke and heat and even fire will move out to the hallway and affect other parts of the building. So it's really important as you leave to close the door.
Yeah, and I will say we actually had a fire last month, September, in one of our high-rise buildings, and the self-closing door worked, the mechanism worked, and the entire apartment was completely destroyed. The resident was safe. But there was no damage to any neighboring apartments. It was unbelievable when you looked inside the apartment that had the fire, to think that did not spread to other apartments. So one ask that we do have for our residents that are on the webinar or that are listening at a later date is please check your doors. We ask superintendents and resident managers to check them, but there are a lot of doors to check throughout the year. So just make sure your door self-closes. If it doesn't, just report it to your super, your resident manager, and let them know so we can get that fixed for you. So it's a great time of year to just, you'll know, you walk out the door, don't close it, see if it self closes on its own, and if it doesn't, please make sure you report that. Okay. So let's take this picture, every year that you show it, Chris, is just it's amazing to me.
Yes, so it doesn't always have to be a fire rated door. This is an interior veneer wooden door. And look at the difference between the room that had the door closed versus the hallway in the apartment. How fast smoke builds up in a room depends on whether or not the door is open or closed. Even interior doors within your apartment can help save lives by limiting the spread of smoke or fire. I know people with small children sometimes like to leave their bedroom door open at night so they can hear them. I would recommend using something like a baby monitor or something like that, because a closed door will help save an awful lot of people in a fire, but also limit the amount of damage. Look at this apartment. The bedroom where the door was closed, it looks like the fire wasn't even in that apartment. But if you look at a couple of things we pointed out on the slide, on the top left, we have the heat line where the paint melted from the heat from a fire in another part of the apartment. I believe it started in the kitchen. Smoke line is the next thing. This smoke was heavy enough from this point up to stain the wall. So where is the escape area, as I talked about earlier? Really down low, right? That's why we crawl and we stay low in a fire. Protected area was behind a closed door, and this room was protected from heat and smoke due to a closed door. And this was a wood veneer door that was able to hold back all those products of combustion for the time being. Because again, the fire wasn't directly outside of that door; it was in the kitchen. But you can see the heat damage that came from the kitchen and melted the paint on the walls and created a tremendous amount of smoke.
Unbelievable. Okay.
Just again, another a couple of pictures to accent what we just talked about. If you look at the top left, the inside of that bedroom door is in the top left picture is on the left. It's still white. It's just you see a little smoke, some smoke stains around it, and then the outside of that door clearly was affected by the products of combustion. You look at the difference between the temperature in the room that is protected by the door versus the room that was involved in fire. About a 900-degree difference. And then those bottom pictures again show the difference between the area that it was exposed to smoke and fire, and then the area that was protected behind a closed door looks relatively unscathed. We can go to the next slide.
All right. Fire extinguishers. So let's talk about the
Yeah,
importance of having these in your apartment.
We'll talk a little bit about the types of fire extinguishers, and fire extinguishers are classified by the type of fire that they'll extinguish. Some fire extinguishers can only be used on certain types of fires, while other extinguishers are made to extinguish more than one type of fire. Portable fire extinguishers are labeled so users can quickly identify the classes of fire for which that extinguisher is effective, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of firematics here, but I'll break it down and make it a lot simpler for you. There's different classes of fires. Class A fires are fires that involve ordinary combustibles. This is wood, paper, plastic, fabrics, ordinary household items. If you see the type of extinguishers that are effective on these types of fires, Class A fires, are water, a water extinguisher charged with air, a dry chemical powder extinguisher charged with air, or halon, which is another kind of extinguishing agent. The old-fashioned way to identify an extinguisher that was effective on Class A fires was an A in a green triangle. The industry's gone to pictographs you'll see in the last column, which are kind of help with language barriers. You'll see, if you see a trash can and a campfire, you know that extinguisher is effective on Class A fires. Then we have our Class B fires. These are flammable liquids and gases, gasoline, oils, paints, lacquers, tar, that kinds of stuff. The types of extinguishers that are effective on it are carbon dioxide, dry chemical powder, and halon. The pictograph is a gas can with the fire, and you won't really see the old B in a red triangle now. You'll see the pictograph. Class C fires, are electrical fires. Again, carbon dioxide, dry powder, chemical extinguisher, and halon. And that you'll see the pictograph is identified by the plug in the outlet with the flames. There are other kinds of extinguishers like Class D, which is combustible metals. You'll see that in manufacturing or like an automotive shop. And Class K, extinguishers you'll see in a commercial kitchen that deals with commercial cooking appliances, and large amounts of vegetable and animal fats and oils. And that's the pictograph there is the frying pan with the fire. The big thing to think about is, well, geez, how am I going to figure out what's on fire and what extinguisher to grab? If we go to the next slide, we'll talk about the most common kinds of fires. It's the ABC fire extinguisher. I'm sorry, Stephanie, we'll just go back a second.
Yeah.
If you look at the ABC fire extinguisher, the dry chemical powder is effective on all these types of fires, A, B, and C. So what you can buy in a hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, or even on Amazon, as a consumer is generally what we classify as an ABC extinguisher. It's dry chemical powder. The powder is not toxic. It's a fine powder, so it could be a respiratory irritant for some, but it's not toxic at all. And it kind of takes the guessing out of everything, because most household fires will either be a Class A, B, or C fire. So you don't have to say, hey, what's on fire? Let me make sure I get the right extinguisher. If you have an ABC dry chemical powder extinguisher, it'll be effective on just about anything. And they are also very effective on grease fires on the stove as well. So we would recommend that if you're buying an extinguisher, and really the only ones available to retail to general consumers are the ABC, and it's a one size fits all, and they are very, very effective. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so if you ever going to attempt to put out a fire with a portable fire extinguisher, there's a few things that we should talk about. The first thing is, well, how much fire can a portable fire extinguisher put out? Well, the average residential home fire extinguisher, whether it's 10 or 5 pound extinguisher, will expel all its extinguishing agent within 25 or 30 seconds. You can put, if it's working properly and you use it properly, you can actually put a lot of fire out. Generally, what we use as a frame of reference is if the fire is not much bigger than a waste paper basket in size. That doesn't mean it's only effective on a waste paper basket. You talked about electrical fires or electrical appliance or even a grease fire on your stove. But if that candle that fell over on a couch cushion, and now that couch cushion is going, and you're comfortable with using a portable fire extinguisher and it's working properly, and you have your back to your exit, we could probably put that control, at least control that much of fire. But if it's spread to the other cushion and took the curtains above it, and maybe to the chair next to it, it's probably way too much fire for that fire extinguisher to handle. The recommendation there is do not even engage in a firefight. If it's a fast growing and spreading fire, make sure we evacuate and close doors behind us. And when we get to a safe spot, call 911. And even if it is a small smoldering fire and you feel confident using a portable fire extinguisher, we should always have 911 called whenever we attempt to put out a fire to ensure that help is on the way in case something goes wrong. Make sure the fire is confined to a small area, is not spreading before we use it. Make sure your back is to your exit. Now, many people have portable fire extinguishers in their apartment. And when I ask people all the time, one of the most common places they keep them is in their kitchen, and that's fine. What I would recommend is if it's in your kitchen underneath your sink next to all your household cleaners and it's been down there for 20 years, first off, take a look at it. Home extinguishers are made for one-time use. There is a little pressure gauge at the top. You'll see it on the slide there on the picture, and the needle should be in the green. But if it's over 20 years old, I wouldn't trust it. I would just get a new one. Home fire extinguishers are made for one-time use. So even if you've used it before to put out a small grease fire on your stove and you feel like there's still extinguishing agent in it, get a new one. And finally, if it is under that sink and the sink is further away than the stove, take it out from under there. And it's better that you put it like in a hall closet so that if you're cooking on the stove and you leave the kitchen for a minute to tend to the kids or to answer the phone or something like that, and you come back and you have a fire on the stovetop, You can step out of the kitchen, or if it's adjacent to the kitchen entrance, grab that fire extinguisher, and again, now have your back to your exit. We never want to try to engage in a firefight with a portable fire extinguisher without our back to our exit. So if we don't have enough product in it, or if it doesn't work for some reason, we can put it down and we can exit. We do not want to cut our path of egress off and have fire between us and our exit. That's really important to remember. The other thing about a properly working fire extinguisher is if it's fully charged, what makes people feel most safe is the air pressure that's used to expel the extinguishing agent. If it's properly charged, you can stand 10 to 12 feet away to begin extinguishing the fire. So you don't have to be right on top of it. If you are right on top of it and you start to extinguish it, the first thing that comes out is air. So it usually will flare up a little bit, and it's not good to be right next to it because you could be injured. So standing 10, 12 feet away, properly working portable fire extinguisher should reach that. And we use the acronym called PASS to remember how to use it. PASS. We pull the pin. Most handles of the fire extinguishers where the operating trigger is are held in place by a metal pin. That pin is a lot of times kept in place by a light gauge plastic zip tie. When we pull the pin, it's almost like a hand grenade pin. We pull the pin, and that pin stays in place to avoid accidental discharge because it makes a big mess. Pull the pin and break that zip tie, okay? Then we take the nozzle and we aim at the base of the fire, not at the flames up above it, at the base of the fire. Starting 10 to 12 feet away with our back to our exit, we squeeze the handle to dispel the extinguishing agent, and then we sweep back and forth, not real fast, back and forth to create a blanket. As we knock down the fire, we can move a little closer to the fire area to extinguish it. But again, only if the fire is small in size and not spreading fast. We use the term the reference not much bigger than a waste paper basket in size, but that doesn't mean it can only put out a waste paper basket fire. Okay, next slide, please. Don't overestimate your ability to put out a fire. Most fires cannot easily or safely be extinguished by yourself. The picture on the right, this would be not fire that we're going to attempt to extinguish with a portable fire extinguisher. I don't care how big it is in your home. Your personal safety is paramount. Again, do not attempt to put out the fire once it begins to spread quickly. And if you attempt to put out the fire, make sure you have a clear path of retreat from the room in case the fire grows or in case the portable fire extinguisher craps out or it's just not enough product to handle it, that you can get out safely and close doors behind you if possible as you exit. Next slide, please. When not to extinguish the fire, and I like these when you don't know what's burning. If you don't have the appropriate equipment, if the room is filling up with a tremendous amount of smoke, it's a major breathing hazard. You wouldn't believe the amount of smoke plastics give off. Most of our home furnishings in 2025 are plastic-based, petroleum-based. This is what our world has evolved in. If you look around your home, you think about how many synthetic fibers you have now. I think about my grandparents' home, and I remember opening the couch cushion in my grandparents' home, and it was filled with cotton. But if we opened any couch cushion or seat cushion in our homes today, what's in there? Polyurethane foam, a plastic petroleum-based product. They burn a lot hotter. They throw off much more toxic smoke, and the fires grow much more rapidly. If you don't know the size of the fire, if the fire is spreading too fast, or if your instincts tell you to get out, right? So obviously, this fire at the top, properly working portable fire extinguisher could probably handle that. But down below, the fire is spreading fast. Do not even attempt to engage in a firefight. Evacuate and close doors. And when you reach a place of safety, call 911. Next slide, please.
All right, Chris, this has been a hot topic year over year.
Okay.
So we gave it its own slide this year.
So I think these products, these fire blankets went viral on social media because we've been getting, in the last year or so, we've been getting tremendous amount of questions about them. We're here, NY Fire Consultants is here to say we are not saying these products are not effective. There are many different products on the market, and they are effective to be able to smother a fire. These fire blankets, their safety device is made of fire-resistant material that could be thrown over a small smoldering fire or like a grease fire on the stove. There are some limitations and concerns to safety. There's size limitations. They can't handle larger, fast-spreading fires. There's a burn risk and heat transfer. The NY Fire Consultant's position on this is these do not replace a properly working portable fire extinguisher. Why? Because we believe a properly working portable fire extinguisher allows you to stay a safer distance away from what's on fire. The fire blankets require you to put your limbs closer to what's on fire. And if not deployed correctly, you risk injury or burning or a burn. There's a little bit more wiggle room, I'll call it wiggle room, for operator error with a portable fire extinguisher if you're 10 to 12 feet away and you can safely exit if the fire extinguisher doesn't work. But if you attempt to use a fire blanket, you have to deploy it properly and you have to get really much closer to what's burning. So that's why we would say, if when asked, what should I use? Should I use a fire blanket or a portable fire extinguisher? We'd say a portable fire extinguisher, or properly working portable fire extinguisher, is your best bet for your own safety. If after you knock down a fire with the portable fire extinguisher, you wanted to throw the blanket over it to ensure extinguishment and there was no active flames, that's fine. But it should not replace calling 911 or using a fire extinguisher. Next slide, please.
All right. So let's talk a little bit more. I know you touched on this a bit, the fire extinguisher maintenance, and we can talk about carbon and smoke detector maintenance as well.
Yeah. So the fire extinguishers, again, the placement, if it's stowed underneath your kitchen sink, I'd recommend taking it out. If you haven't looked at the fire extinguisher in a hall closet or somewhere in your home, take a look at it tonight after the webinar. Make sure that needle, the charge needle, is in the green zone, not in the red zone. And if it is, fire extinguisher, it should be replaced. I prefer if the portable fire extinguisher to be outside your kitchen area. This way you can safely step back, grab it, and then come back in with your back to your exit. We've been asked how many extinguishers should you have in an apartment. I think generally if you had two, you're in good shape. There's one in the kitchen area and then one in a hall closet near the front door. This way, when you go to retrieve it, you automatically have your back to your exit. And if you go back and the fire has spread and now you don't feel comfortable extinguishing it, or it's too much fire, your back is to your exit. To stow it in a bedroom closet or something like that, you may wind up cutting your path of exit off by trying to retrieve it. We should check them monthly to check the pressure, and if they're expired or dented or damaged in any way, please replace them. Note that fire extinguishers shouldn't be put in your regular trash. You can look on the Department of Sanitation's website for the proper disposal of fire extinguishers. And the other thing is, there are some fire extinguishers, at least they were on the market not too long ago, that had plastic handles at the top. Many of those were recalled. So you want to get a portable fire extinguisher with a metal handle. How big of a fire extinguisher for home use? Generally, a 5 or 10 pound fire extinguisher is sufficient for most home use. Moving on to smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. These are required by fire code in any multiple dwelling. We recommend putting them in every bedroom, hallway, and every level of your home. I'm going to assume most apartments are one level. And if you don't have them in every bedroom, they should at least be within 15 feet outside of every sleeping room. So in the public hall outside the bedrooms, generally smoke detectors within 15 feet of all bedroom doors. You can test them monthly by pressing and hold the test button to make sure that it activates. Now we have smoke detectors that say fire, or carbon monoxide. That's fine. Cleaning them, you can gently dust them or even gently vacuum them to keep them clear. We should replace batteries at least once a year. The picture on the right, this woman is tending to her her smoke detector. It is hardwired. You see that it is powered by electricity coming from the home. But even these detectors have battery backup in case of a blackout, in case we lose electricity. And those batteries should be replaced at least once a year, or when you hear them chirping. If you have no smoke condition and you just hear it chirping every 25, 30 seconds, it generally is telling you the battery needs to be replaced. A lot of times people think about placing the batteries in their smoke detectors whenever they move the clocks forward or backward. That's a good time to change the batteries. We do have newer smoke detectors that are being sold that have 10-year lithium-ion batteries in them, so that doesn't require frequent replacement, as frequent replacement. But if you have an old-fashioned AA battery or a 9-volt battery, you want to change that battery at least once a year. If it is hardwired, and if it's not hardwired, if it's just powered by the battery, I'd say about every 6 months. And a great time to remember to do that is when you change your clocks forward and backward for us here in the Northeast. And if you should communicate with building management if you need some assistance changing the battery or maintaining your smoke detector. Okay, next
All
slide.
right. This was another
Yeah.
big topic. Lots of questions. Lithium-ion batteries and safety.
Lithium-ion battery safety. Lithium-ion batteries are pervasive throughout society now. They are used in all sorts of devices. We see them in what we call micro-mobility devices, which are, e-bikes, e-scooters, e-skateboards, but they're common to everywhere. Our laptops, our cell phones, all lithium-ion battery technology. They're in automobiles, some of our electric cars. There are other devices like electric wheelchairs, all being powered by lithium-ion battery technology. It is affordable technology. It is very useful technology. One of the reasons why we see more lithium-ion battery accidental fires or fires with micro-mobility devices, our e-bikes, our e-scooters, our e-skateboards, and that kind of stuff, is because they come in contact with the elements and are more likely to be damaged. When we see bikes using these devices in the extreme cold or at the extreme heat, they're hitting curbs, they're getting damaged outside. And when one of those cells in the lithium-ion battery packs have different cells of the lithium-ion batteries, if one is damaged and begins to off gas and catches fire, there's what we call thermal runaway, and they all catch on fire. To avoid some things to avoid when we're talking about lithium-ion battery devices. Avoid using resale or damaged batteries and chargers. Only use the manufacturer battery that came with it, and if you have to replace the battery, the batteries that are only sold or recommended by the manufacturer, and the chargers. Do not leave the battery charging overnight. This is not a good idea. Okay, because this is sometimes when overheating occurs, especially if the device is damaged. I'm sure many of you have experienced sometimes picking up your cell phone and it being very hot. I've had that before when my battery was kind of dying and my cell phone was on its last legs. That's kind of an indication that we may have a problem with the battery. Do not overload an outlet or power strip. These devices should be plugged, the batteries at least when charging should be plugged directly into a wall outlet. Do not store near an exit or another heat source, like resting it up on a radiator, stove, or something like that, because if the batteries are damaged on some of these e-bikes and e-scooters, those heat sources can further increase the probability that they catch on fire. And also storing near an exit, we're blocking our path out of our apartment if this is the device that goes on fire. We're not to place these batteries in the regular trash recycling bin. It's illegal. I've gone to several garbage truck fires that people throw them in their battery in their regular trash bags, and then the hopper crushes the garbage truck hopper crushes it, and it causes a fire. So again, the Department of Sanitation's website will give you different places in every borough where you can bring these batteries to be recycled.
We had questions come in about whether you can use a fire extinguisher to
No.
put out a lithium-ion battery fire.
These fires produce so much gas and a tremendous amount of heat and flame, and goes in all directions. AFDNY does not recommend, and most fire service personnel do not recommend even attempting to use a portable fire extinguisher. You need massive amounts of water to fully extinguish a lithium-ion battery fire. So for personal safety, do not even engage in a firefight with a lithium-ion battery fire. Just get away and exit and close doors.
You,
The best practices for these things, always refer to your lease or your building's bylaws. There are, certain buildings that are like co-op buildings and stuff that do not permit them in their property. Make sure that the devices you purchase are also rated by a nationally recognized testing lab, like UL rated. They'll have a U Underwriters Laboratory sticker on it. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for charging and storage. Keep exit paths clear at all times, and obviously dispose of your batteries properly and not in irregular trash.
and Chris, it's pertinent to just say also with that most likely the individual will be overcome with the gases given off by the battery.
Yes.
They would not have a chance to even fight the fire. The gases would
No.
overcome them and probably render them unconscious or worse.
Yeah,
Get
not only
out
these
immediately.
fires, not only are these fires very intense and throw off a tremendous amount of heat, but the gas from these things is very, very toxic. Anybody can go on YouTube and you can you can search lithium-ion battery or e-bike fires, and you'll see how fast these things take off and how much smoke and flame come out of these things. Medical emergencies, probably more a very common emergency in a large multiple dwelling, more common than fire. Realize in New York City, in the event that we have a medical emergency, we can call 911, and after calling 911, notify building staff so that they're prepared for first responders coming in. Here in New York City, realize you're most likely going to first have a fire truck, a fire engine with firefighters who are medically trained to respond first, because we can get to you faster and provide life-saving care in the event of a life-threatening emergency like difficulty breathing or a cardiac event. Also, follow the exact instructions of the 911 operator. Recognize in New York City, when you call 911, you go to a general call taker that says 911, what is your emergency? If the nature of it has something to do with crime, they transfer you to a police dispatcher. If it has to do with fire, gas, or medical emergency, they transfer you to a fire department dispatcher. If it is a medical emergency, the person on the other end is at least an EMT or a paramedic that might be able to give you some life-saving advice for the loved one that you're calling about. When calling 911, include the following information: your building address, the entrance that provides the quickest access to the patient, the number of patients, and their exact location inside or outside the building. In a large multiple dwelling, we need to know the apartment number. It's imperative. Let's say the apartment building's 20 stories and someone's calling from the 17th floor saying they have chest pain, or they think their husband or wife is having a heart attack. If we don't know the apartment number, it's going to take a lawful time once we get to the address to find you. That's why you should notify building staff as well. What is the patient's chief complaint? We do not have to be a medical professional or a doctor. Are they bleeding? Do they have chest pain? Are they breathing or not breathing? Are they conscious, not conscious? That kind of stuff. Any hazards involved? If the injury was a result of an accident or illness is a result of an accident, because the dispatcher will send additional resources. And your name and telephone number in case the call drops, so they can call you back. This will help increase or decrease the amount of time it takes for professional help to get to you if they have all this information. So this is real important to think about, and medical emergencies happen a lot more often than fires. So this is really, really important, and it's one of the basic tenets of the FDNY and fire service all over the country, responding to medical emergencies and giving pre-hospital life-saving care to people. We're in the business of life safety, and medical emergencies come under that. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry that I went over by a minute.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You know what? This is it every year, Chris. This is so important. I mean, I think as property management companies, yes, like we're responsible for making sure that we help support building staff and that we're looking over the financials of the building and obviously a resource to boards. But the number one priority is the life and safety of all of our residents.
There's just one question that seemed to pop up quite a bit as I was scrolling through the Q&A. Was about the doors. When people leave the apartment, should they lock the door? Should they leave the door open? They should close the door, take their keys, But if possible, remember to leave it open so the fire department can get right in and don't have to take the time to break the door down. We will get into the apartment, but it'd be a lot easier to just turn the knob and step in and not to
Yes.
do damage to
So
the door.
don't, so shut the
Yeah.
door, but don't lock it.